Yeah, greetings. Today, we're going to have some recipes on the website, and instead of people having to call me and we're going to talk about how we could do some recipes. And so today we're going to make some formulas. All right, we're going to do the 3 formulas today, and then we're going to increase the formula so that people can learn about the herb and how they work. So today we're going to do a formula to build the blood, and we're going to do a formula for the lung and the throat if you have throat cancer, and if you have what we call tonsillitis, laryngitis, anything in the throat. And we're going to do a formula to stop the bleeding of the nose, bleeding of the rectum, bleeding in the stomach, ulcers. If you have ulcers and they're bleeding, we're going to give you a formula to stop bleeding. If you have menorrhagia, the woman, and you have excessive amount of bleeding, we're going to show you how to stop the bleeding. All right? If you have a heavy period, we're going to show you how to keep the period running normal so you don't have or get a low HB. All right? And then the next video, we're going to have another set of formulas so that people can learn about herbs. All right? Because it's each one teach one. So the first formula we're going to work on is the one to build the blood. We're building the blood now. And the first herb we use is a herb called danshen. All right? So this is one herb, danshen. We use another herb called yellow dock root. And this herb is interesting because this herb helps the liver, although it has iron, but it also helps the liver to absorb iron. You know what I mean? And remember, when a woman have low HB or you have low blood, we have to work on the spleen and we have to work on your liver, because the spleen makes your blood and the liver stores the blood. Although this herb is a good herb for the skin, but it is also full of iron and it helps your liver to absorb it. So we must use this herb once we are building the blood, right? Next one is called Rehmannia. It's a Chinese plant. And we use this herb for building the blood, but it is also used for kidney yang. And if you have trouble in the kidney, and the kidney is diseased, we use this particular herb with some cordyceps and some nettle leaf, and this also helps to keep the kidney strong. But it builds the blood also because it works on the spleen. Rehmannia, don't forget the herb name. Rehmannia, yellow dock root, and a herb called danshen. And this is a very pleasant tasting herb. It's a herb from China also. Next herb we use, again, is a herb called nettle leaf. See there? It's a wonderful herb to build the blood, but it is a food herb for the kidney. So if you have edema, if you have low blood, if you're lacking in magnesium, or you want what we call a potassium sparing diuretic, this is the herb you have to use. But it also builds the blood. So all these herbs here, these 4 plants, can be used with some sorrel or hibiscus, some parsley, which also builds the blood, some ashwagandha, which is a herb from India, and another herb called watercress. And all these herbs together with molasses will build the blood. You don't have to go and drink no trihimic and no ifer. They build the blood because they work on the spleen and your liver, so they help the liver to absorb the blood, and then they help the spleen to make the blood. So you fix your troubles. So it is also a good remedy for cancer patients, because mostly all cancer patients do have low HBs, right? So this is what we call a blood builder, right? Next one is called, we're going to use this one here to stop bleeding. So if you have bleeding of the gums, if you have bleeding in the uterus, if you have menorrhagia, if you have hemorrhoids and you have bleeding, if you have nosebleeds, if you have blood in the urine, these are herbs we could use to stop the bleeding, right? And this herb is called shepherd's purse. And shepherd's purse have lots of acetylcholine, which help as a vascular dilator, and also help to increase your vitamin K, to increase your platelet counts, so you could stop the blood to clot a little better. Shepherd's purse. Another herb we use here for bleeding is red raspberry leaves. It is an herb that all women should use when they are pregnant, because it helps you to have a good delivery, but it also tonifies and strengthens the uterus, and it also prevents miscarriages. It acts as a herb for also prostate, body prostate, and for the bladder. but it also helps to stop bleeding, right? So shepherd's purse, red raspberry leaves, another herb here called hawthorn, leaf and flower. It's a herb for the heart. It deals with circulation, but it also helps to keep the blood from moving. I'm sorry, not the blood from moving, but it also helps to stop the bleeding. Yeah? Wonderful. Next one is called cayenne pepper. And it's a hot plant, but a pinch of it, the cayenne pepper, in the mixture of these herbs will help a woman to stop her from having what we call menorrhagia. All right, heavy bleeding. Another one is called yarrow. Yarrow is a herb that we've been using for centuries now. And we also use this herb for when you have troubles in the colon. If you have ileitis, diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, mucus colitis, ulcerative colitis, any kind of inflammation in the intestines, this herb works there. But if you have bleeding from hemorrhoids or any type of bleeding, this herb should be used regularly. But it is also an herb used for the intestines and for high blood pressure. Yarrow, Y-A-R-R-O-W. Cinnamon. We use this particular herb for passive bleeding too. When you have, although it deals with what we call purpura circulation, it also works on bleeding. If you have too much bleeding, it stops it also. All these herbs put together. And the last one is one we call Tahiti ginseng. Tahiti ginseng is wonderful for passive bleeding, but mixed with all these other herbs, once you have a heavy bleeding, it stops the bleeding because it helps to increase vitamin K. Yeah, wonderful. The next one we're going to talk about is for the throat. When you have sinuses, if you have laryngitis, if you have tonsillitis, if you have sinus infection, these herbs, if you have throat cancer or you have lung cancer, these herbs will work wonderful there. First one is called ho hum. And ho hum is a bitter, also works in your digestive system, but it is wonderful for the lungs and it's wonderful for the throat. If you have any kind of cough, colds, flus, wonderful herb to use there. Next one is called sage. Very important herb. Red sage, white sage, and black sage. But this one is called red sage. And this herb can be used if you have excessive amount of sweating. It stops you from sweating in your hands. You know what I mean? But it is also used for the throat. When you have any kind of trouble in the throat cancer, if you have a cough, if you have colds, if you have flus, if you have viruses, if you have parasites, this is the herb to use. Or if you have a large prostate gland, it shrinks the prostate also. These are all herbs used for the throat. This one again, it's called echinacea. And we use echinacea to increase the T4 or the CD4 cells. And it also works on the lymphatic system. But it is an herb that helps to keep the respiratory system healthy, especially in children when they have tonsillitis. But it is also good to build up the immune system and to keep the T lymphocytes healthy. Yeah? Next one, myrrh. Myrrh. Myrrh was the herb that given to the Christ in Bible time with frankincense. And don't you know that this herb is so wonderful for any kind of funguses, any kind of swelling. But it is so important for the throat. When you have any kind of trouble in your throat, if you have strep throat, you could gather with this with some peppermint oil and it goes away. If you have throat cancer, you can use this herb with golden seal and echinacea, ho hum, white sage, and these herbs will help to heal the condition of the lungs or of the throat. All right? These are formulas that we use on a regular basis for different diseases in different areas. Yeah? The next video we're going to have one on the womb, how to keep the womb. We're going to have a formula on how to teach women to keep the womb healthy and increase uterine circulation. We will have another one for the men and the prostate and the bladder to prevent prostatitis and prostate enlargement. And then we will have another one made for shrinking tumors in any part of the body. All right? So until, give the Most High the glory, Jehovah God. All right? Blessed love. Peace. Which one?